Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to have you here and to have Christy Oates here today. It's actually kind of a bittersweet day for us at the Renwick because Christy is our last public program for the 40 Under 40 exhibition, which opened in July, and we've had a steady stream of the 40 artists coming to visit us and talk about their work and tell us sort of about their own little worlds. And I'm really excited that Christy is able to join them. She came all the way from San Diego for today, which is a big trip to make just to tell us about her work, so I'm appreciative of that. And I think it's just a really fun way to cap off this whole exhibition because, of course, Christy's work, as you're about to see, is so innovative and so much about exploring the different tools that we have at hand and the different ways that we can bring different worlds together and employ them really in the name of craft. And so I think she'll do that very well. Christy has a BFA from the Minnesota Institute of Arts, it's Minneapolis, I'm sorry. I knew it was an M. And an MFA from San Diego State University, where she's also been an instructor. For those of you that are familiar with the field of studio furniture, she is a student of Wendy Maruyama's, or was a student of Wendy's. And it's actually through Wendy that I learned about Christy. When we were putting the show together, I contacted a lot of professors I knew, and I said, what are some of the best students you've had over the last decade or 15 years? And Christy's name was one of the first that came back to me, and you're about to see exactly why Wendy was so in praise of her work. It is remarkable stuff, and it teaches us, certainly for those of us at the Renwick, where we don't always have a lot of exposure to the most emerging technologies, it shows us just what is possible, and especially when you blend those technologies with the right imagination. So I should just mention a couple of things. Please turn off your phones or make them quiet. I know it's not your fault if somebody calls you, but I will hold you accountable. We also wanted to mention that the shop just reopened today. We went through just a transition downstairs. It was closed for a couple of weeks. And so I do encourage you just to come downstairs. We have some new merchandise, new books for sale, and of course the catalog is also for sale downstairs for this last weekend that the exhibition is open. So please do take a trip down there on your way out. Otherwise, Christy, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you, Nicholas, and thank you, everyone, for being here today. And thank you to Katie Crooks for getting me to do this program. Like Nicholas said, I'm a woodworker. I'm originally from a small rural town in Wisconsin. I'm going to go over some of my earlier work, but I wanted to start actually kind of in the middle and then go backwards. So I'm going to play a video for you first, and some of you might have seen this. This includes some of the work downstairs, and it was my thesis show in 2009 for my MFA. So the 40 Under 40 Craft Futures show, when I first got an email from Deborah asking me to be in the show, I was very, very excited. And being at the opening this summer was very exciting for me. And then preparing this presentation, I started to think, what does this mean for me as an artist and for the artists in the show, because Nicholas curated the show, and he was thinking about the future of craft, commemorating the Renwick, the 40th anniversary of the Renwick. And for me, it's kind of like, well, does this mean that Nicholas thinks that these artists are going to be artists to follow in the future? Or does it mean this is the kind of work that everyone is going to be doing in the future? And it was sort of a foreboding thought to think, that I'm the future of craft, because, I don't think of myself that way. But more than anything, I think it was just him sort of choosing what is out there currently and calling it Craft Futures, because he's hoping, craft will have a revitalization of a younger generation, which is my philosophy right now. I do a lot of work with CAD, computer-aided drafting software, laser cutting. I also work in 3D printers occasionally, and CNC routers. And there's sort of a disconnect between craft artists because it's so steeped in tradition. And a lot of those artists are afraid to grasp technology. They're a little bit afraid of it. They've spent their lives mastering a craft, and they're afraid to start over and learn new tools. So a lot of them just sort of dismiss it and say, well, that's, the easy way out, which is not the case at all. But one thing I was thinking about also was that this summer, when I was here for the opening, I met someone, and she said that, and she's a collector, and she said that the collectors of craft are getting older. And at first I thought, well, you're not old. I thought she was, I was just trying to be kind. But then I thought about what she said, and she's right. The collectors of craft are getting older, and the younger generation is not collecting craft, because craft had its heyday back in like the 60s and 70s, and that generation that was of craft artists are aging. And new artists aren't really taking their place. Most younger artists identify more as artists than craftsmen. I myself, I think about, I call it artwork, I call it craft, I call it design. It depends on the piece and how I feel about it at the time. But less and less artists are adopting the word craft, especially with the CCA dropping its C, College of Art and Craft. Or was it the C? Yeah, that's right. CCAC, that was it. California College of Art and Crafts. They dropped the last C, so now it's just California College of Art. So craft has kind of become a dirty word. And I think the way to get people to, a younger generation to collect craft is to kind of include other forms of it, which is why I think digital craft forms are very important right now, and to include them in the definition of craft, which a lot of people don't include that at all. When I think of my generation, the kind of art they collect, they're looking back at their sort of youth. Not that I'm that old that I should be looking back at my youth, but some of the collectors that are my age, they're collecting not art, but they're collecting old technology, like old video games and arcade games and stuff like that. So I think it's interesting that I just think that adapting technology in craft is something that we all need to do and think about to give it a future. So that being said, the work I do with lasers is sort of, there's not many people doing it. I'm kind of lucky right now because I'm sort of the only person working in my field, really. There's only a handful of people doing laser marquetry. The reason for that is because the equipment is so expensive. A lot of students, they'll get to take a class in it, and then when they graduate, they can't afford the machinery. And I've been lucky enough to find ways to keep doing it, working in trade for time on a laser, and right now I'm working in trade to sort of pay off my own laser, which is great. But the technology, like all technology, is very expensive at first and then gets cheaper and cheaper as, as time goes on and more people buy it. So it's at a point right now where it's starting to get a lot cheaper. I have a China-made laser, which makes it a lot cheaper than the American-made lasers. The quality isn't as good, but it's at that point where it's starting to get cheaper and cheaper, so there's more on the market, they're more accessible to people, so I think there's going to be a huge expansion of digital craft in the next couple of years. But also, there's not a lot of people doing really great digital craft work yet. I mean, there's some great ones, there's some really great ones, but it hasn't blown up like I think it's going to. And the reason for that is because of the students. They're getting a small dose of it in school. They're not getting the background of craft and woodworking and honing a skill plus the technology so they can combine them. And I think that's the important thing. And as time goes on, I think we're going to see some really, really amazing things with craft and technology. So I wanted to show you a little bit about where I come from, some of my earlier work, just because I'm combining some earlier work, well, my grasp of materials and things that I did before I adopted the technology, and combining the two. So I first started at, hang on, oops. I started making work at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. I got my BFA in furniture design there, and that program was really great because it wasn't material focused. It was very explorational. So this is a piece I did, and they were all based on assignments, basically. So this piece was based on the song, the Judy Garland song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And it was an experiment with metals and upholstery. And it was one of the first pieces I did. I think I actually did this in my second semester. But it was coming from a very rural background in Wisconsin. It was sort of a huge change for me to go to art school and be exposed to that sort of culture. It was a real awakening for me. So I felt like Judy Garland, stepping over the rainbow, when it goes from black and white to color. So this was sort of an expressional piece. I get a lot of comments about LGBT stuff, and although I am a supporter, I'm not a lesbian, although anybody that sees this piece thinks I'm a lesbian, but not that there's anything wrong with that. This piece was kind of a Dr. Seuss-based piece. We had a visiting artist at MCAD when I was there named Mike Houseluk, and I believe he's got work in here, doesn't he? Maybe some of you know Mike's work, but he demonstrated some pieces where he turned some vessels and he took this gel medium in almost like a frosting, like a squeeze bottle kind of thing, and he would dot it on the work, and I thought, well, that is really cool. So I wanted to do a piece. The structure is fiberglass, which I took a fiberglass class, and I was learning about fiberglass, and fiberglass, you kind of have to hone it and smooth it and sand it, and there's a lot of work involved in it. And so I didn't want to do all that work. And so I thought I'd cover it. So I thought, well, I'll just, I'll do this Mike Houseluk technique where I dot all these. And by the end of it, as you can see, there's these little balls here, and these are all little tiny dots of really thick paint. By the time I was done, my hands were just completely numb, and I've never fully regained all feeling in my thumbs after this piece, but it was a fun piece to do. This piece is actually one of the first transformative pieces that I did. They are lamps, but they're also stools, and they're also costumes. So the skirts on them and the ballerina slippers can actually be taken off and worn by a little girl. This, I sort of made I guess I kind of experimented with different themes, and this was a little bit of a feminist piece, although it turned out not being as much since, they're stools, so when you sit on it, your ass becomes the head. So they didn't work out quite like I wanted to, but they kind of make a different statement than I had started with. Let's move on. This is the plunger series, and I worked a lot with found objects, and I really loved just going into Home Depot and just walking around Home Depot for hours and hours and just finding things and putting them together and figuring out what I could come up with. So this is all plumbing pipe. The on-off switch on the lamps is a faucet knob, and just combined all the lighting in there with like a micro switch kind of thing. Just a fun piece. This is a transformative piece. Starts out as a stool, and then the legs pop out underneath and it becomes sort of a little higher stool, and then the top flips over and it becomes a table. It was an experiment in an upholstery class, so I was experimenting with leather. Also, I should say, my mother, who is here today, she was my first introduction to craft. She does upholstery in the basement of our home, and my childhood home. She still does it. She's been doing it for 35 years, I think, now. So I was never really a woodworker, but I had an introduction to craft and sort of the work ethic from her. So this was an upholstery piece, and it was fun to take the upholstery class because all the students were new to it, and I was sort of teaching them and teaching the teacher at the same time because I had that teaching from my mother. This was the first digital work I had done. We had a 3D printer at MCAD, and this is a piece. I designed the top part of the lamp in the computer, and then I turned the base on a lathe. This is a gypsum printer, so it lays down gypsum powdered material and then a glue, and it builds it up. This piece was a plywood bent piece, and this is a technique that I learned from Mike Husluck, actually, also. He takes wood and he burns it, and when you stain wood, the stain will go into the grain, it will bleed into the grain. And so what he did was he would burn the wood, and it would kind of stop that bleeding. So you could stain certain areas of wood without having it bleed into the rest of the wood. The burn would stop that. So that's what I did on this piece. All these circles on it are hand burned, and then each are individually stained. This is another bent wood piece that I did. This is a found object piece. I worked in a movie theater when I was in high school, and I'm a big fan of films, and when I left, they had given me some 35 millimeter film. Actually, they were going to throw it out, and I just took it. But the 35 millimeter film, I thought was a great found object. I wanted to do something with it. So I welded like a grid in almost like a grill, like a barbecue grill kind of grid, and put it into this wooden table and just wove the film through it, and I thought it was just a great texture. I think the film in this one is Star Wars. Or no, this one is Spies Like Us. This is another table I did. It's all welded, and I think this one is Star Wars. This one I did as part of there was a show on HGTV, and they asked me to do something for one of their shows. They had seen the film tables, so I made this for them. And it's all put together with screws, so it's like a DIY do-at-home project. And the reels, the film reels I actually found on eBay, which is where I get a lot of found objects. They actually sell the film, the 35 millimeter film on eBay, and so I was able to get different trailers, different film trailers for different projects. This one was also for that HGTV show, another film that I found on eBay, and the legs are actually IKEA legs. And this is a wine rack that was also an antique reel, which was also found on eBay. This was kind of a fun piece to do. Actually, I've gotten in trouble for this piece this year, or last year I think it was, even though I did this back in 2006. Some people that are very against using fur coats and animals for their fur kind of got after me on a social media page. But this piece was, I think it was for I think it was a final project in my upholstery class, actually, and I wanted to do something fun. And so I went to a thrift store, and I found a mink coat, and it was, this really great feeling mink coat, and it was disgusting because it was from a thrift store, and who knows who had worn it. And took it back to the shop and cut it all up and glued it on there. So it's a take on the Merritt Oppenheim piece, the Luncheon Fur, where she has the teacup, and it's got the fur on it, and it really removes any functionality from the object. And I thought, well, what greater thing to put on a hygienic sort of toilet than this gross, disgusting fur, which first of all, you look at it and you feel it and you think, well, this is really luxurious, but then you think about using it more than once, and then you think, this is not the kind of thing I want to use. And then also the fact that, who knows where the fur is, and it was also on a dead animal at one point, or a live animal that was killed for it. So it's sort of this piece that's like a love-hate kind of piece. Like, it's great to feel, great to look at, but when you think about what it actually is, it's kind of disgusting. And then I made a foray into taxidermy, where I taxidermied furniture. So this piece was kind of like a deer head mount kind of thing, but it's actually 2 chair legs. And this was kind of the same play where I took part of a chair and just mounted it on a board, sort of like a trophy, like I had killed this chair. Because I did. I took it all apart. And again, it's all thrift store stuff. This one, couch skin rug, I actually skinned a couch, so I was pretty proud of that. I went out and killed that couch, and I skinned it. This was my thesis project for my BFA, which was just sort of a fun furniture piece, more fun to look at than sit on because it's not very comfortable. But the process was really interesting, the way I had to form it around something to weld it all together. There's a whole lot of steel in this piece. And I made a set, so I made a chair, and then I also made a table. And these are steel circles, and they're all welded where they connect. This is my starting my MFA work. Wooden dress, which is sort of it was supposed to be just the most uncomfortable dress that you could actually wear. And it's all put together with elastic thread, which is actually, I'm using bungee cord in my folding furniture. So this was kind of where the first idea for it came from, was this elastic thread. So it would be able to expand when you put it on. Yeah, this one's, I don't think this needs a description. This one, coming from the Midwest in a very rural town, everybody loves their guns there. And this came actually from a conversation with my mother because she wanted a gun and I didn't think she needed one. She wanted it for protection, but she ends up using it for skeet shooting, so I like that a lot better. But my argument with her was, you don't need a gun for protection, just lock your door, because everyone back home leaves their door unlocked. I experiment also with some electronic kind of things. This was like a LED wire, and it was used in a performance piece. This is called Personal Space Alarm Party Dress, and it's got sensors in the breasts, and so they're the sensors that you would put on the back. All new cars come with sensors in the back now, so when you back up to something, if you get too close, it starts to beep. So the idea is that if you get too close to me, it's sort of like, the personal space at a party, or where everyone gets a little bit too close sometimes. So this alarm goes off if you get too close. This piece is called Security Blanket. My mother is a quilter, and I wanted to make a quilt, and kind of combining my childhood growing up with thinking about what I did in the evening growing up. And my mother would be quilting, and my dad would be checking his lottery tickets. And it's actually made with the bed sheets from my childhood bed, the pink gingham. This is called Sweetheart Sweater. This was sort of, I had moved out to San Diego, and I was single and sort of trying to start dating, and it was just this terrible, awful experience just to be in the dating game. Everyone's sort of pushing you together and, just not knowing where the boundaries are kind of thing. And, oh, I just hate that. So anyways, this is called Sweetheart Sweater. So it's made for a man and a woman so they could hold hands, but they couldn't, do much else because their hands are in the sweater. This piece is called Inner Beauty. And this was my first piece that I tried any sort of laser cutting on. It's actually laser engraved. And the idea for this piece was that what's inside is what counts, obviously. So it's got all these laser engraved brand names of different perfumes, cosmetics, that kind of thing. And it's got this image on it of a woman. And she's sort of posing as if she's maybe looking in a mirror or something like that. But what's inside is knowledge, obviously. So it's about the inner beauty of a woman. This piece I did was interesting because it was hard for me in San Diego financially. I had to spend a lot on materials, and I had nowhere to put anything either. I mean, the rent was so expensive there. I was living in this really, really, really tiny apartment. And everything I made, I would bring home, and I had to store it somewhere. Most of my friends, they had like storage lockers kind of thing, but I really didn't want to spend the money on that. So I had this really tiny apartment, and I would bring everything home. And when I brought these pieces home, I just started thinking about how much I spent on them and what I was going to do with them. And it was a turning point for me because I didn't really like what I was doing. I was doing some fun stuff, some found object stuff, but what was I going to do with it, And so I wanted to take a more formal approach into the functionality of things, thinking more about craft, function with the body, that kind of stuff. These pieces were obviously very functional, but they were made to sort of connect together, so to reduce their function, actually. The chairs are connected so they're facing away from each other. And they're called conversation chairs because you actually have to sort of turn around to talk to someone. But anyways, when I finished these pieces, I brought them home and I didn't have anywhere to put them. I ended up making mounts and putting them on the ceiling, or on the wall up by the ceiling. And then I started doing that with a lot of the pieces that I had. Putting them on the wall, mounting things on the wall because I didn't have anywhere to put them, which is how I came up with the folding furniture idea, because I really didn't have anywhere to put anything, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if these chairs were actually made to go on the wall? So I started thinking about that and folding mechanisms. This was the first piece I did. This and the next one I kind of did at the same time. And I started out not laser cutting these or CNC routing these. I started out making these by hand. So these are all cut with a router. And it's just a walnut piece. This piece, I have a video, I think, of this one. So this one actually didn't have the bungee cords in it. It had some hidden hinges, and it folds out, and you can put it away when you're not using it. But this piece was why I started laser cutting, I think, because I broke my hand making this piece. I had to cut out a hole in it, and I was using this huge, powerful drill with this huge Forstner bit, and it torqued my hand, and I broke my hand. So after that, I switched to easier methods of construction. So, and then this piece was next, and the idea for this piece was sort of, it's a folding chair, obviously, and I was thinking about the Kossuth piece, which is 1 in 3 chairs, where he's got the chair, a picture of a chair on the wall, the definition of a chair, and then an actual chair. Or no, wait, he's got a picture of a chair, and the definition. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I was thinking about that piece and how this is a chair, but I also wanted to have a picture of a chair. So it's a picture of a folding chair. It is a folding chair, and then the sort of 1 in 3 chairs is that it's just a picture of a folding chair on a folding chair. So the picture is the actual piece. This is the next piece I did, and I did quite a few chairs, and each time I would change them. I've got I think 8 different chairs now, and each time I make one, I make it a little bit different, a little bit better. So this was taking the idea of that folding chair in the last piece and making sort of like a blueprint of it. So you see just sort of a side view right here of a chair. And this is the thesis work. So the sign for the thesis show was actually a folding piece. It was a sign and a shelf, basically. And then the mosquito lamp, which is downstairs. And all of these pieces, I wanted sort of an overarching theme for them. And I wanted them to kind of be a cohesive body of work because it was my thesis show. And I think I went a little bit overboard, but the way I brought it all together, besides having them all fold, was the origami theme. And I came up with these forms by folding paper. So I came up with the hinging method by folding paper and figured out, kind of how they would fold. It was from an engineering standpoint. So I wanted to go back to this origami theme. This piece has mosquitoes on it, and they're being drawn to the light bulb in the middle. Mosquitoes, you think of moths drawn to the bulb, but where I come from in Wisconsin, it's all mosquitoes. So this piece, it's got the mosquitoes on the front, and you can see the light turn on from the front as that actually can shine through the veneer. And then when you open it, underneath, back here, is also an origami mosquito. But on these pieces, I wanted to have like a secondary image. So the mosquito on the inside or under the lamp is a different form of that origami mosquito. So it's kind of a process. I was looking at origami directions. And it'll take you through the process and show you little illustrations of it along the way so you can follow along and fold it. And so I've got 2 separate images, and they're sort of chronological. Oh, there you can see it better, the other mosquitoes. And then, of course, on the inside, it's got this cord that sort of finishes. This is the frog table, which also has a secondary image right here. So the first origami frog is sort of part folded, and then this is the origami frog that's finished folding. The crane chair, which is downstairs, this piece, there's several different origami folding methods. One is where you see sort of the illustrations. Another one is where you see the folds in the paper, and you're supposed to figure it out for yourself. A lot of origami artists and scientists, they use this method and have people sort of figure out their puzzle. So the idea for this piece is that it shows you the memory of the folds. So the picture on the front is an origami crane, but you would fold the crane and then you would open up the paper, and these are the folds that are left. So it's kind of saying this piece has been folded before and it can be folded again because it has, has a memory. And then you open it up, and actually the secondary origami image here is the origami crane, but it's not completely folded yet. So it kind of tells you there's one more step here. And then when you fold it, you can see right here, it's the origami crane and it's completely folded. So it kind of signifies that you're done folding. This is the crab desk, and this piece has a desk and a stool that pops out. Again, it's got sort of a secondary origami crab on it. This is the skyline table, and this kind of got away from the origami theme. It still has some origami cranes in it, but the idea behind the folding furniture was that it was supposed to be for small spaces because the inspiration came from the small apartment. So I wanted to do like a New York skyline because I thought that's where this furniture would get the most use, is in the tiny apartments of New York where space is at a premium. this is the wallpaper chair, and I wanted to take the chair form and sort of convey the fact that this can be like a camouflage kind of thing. So the pattern on the front mimics just a repeating wallpaper pattern. And the nice thing about this one was I cut the veneer, and then I took the positive and negative shapes and I just transposed them and glued them. So you can see right here, you've got walnut on maple and then maple on walnut. So there was absolutely no waste from this piece. And I have a video, excuse me, of the process. So what you see when I take the material off the laser is really all the weight that's left from these, because the nice thing about laser cutting is that, well, I mean, if you cut something with a saw, you're left with, you have a kerf, which is what the saw takes away from the material. So you've got a table saw blade that's 1/8 of an inch. You cut a piece of wood, you're minus 1/8 of an inch because that's sawdust now. So the laser is about 0.0017 inches thick. So I've got, you know, I can just cut everything and just have it fit back together in a puzzle without losing any material at all. So the only waste from the piece is what's around it, which I leave myself a little extra to center it. And then just about maybe a couple 1/8 pieces I cut out of the middle just to make things so they're not so tight, so they have a little flex. And then I take out some of the waste from the back sides just to make the piece lighter if I need to ship it or something like that. But otherwise, they're very little waste. And flat pack, which is nice for shipping. So this piece I did in 2011. This is the e-waste project, which is also downstairs. The idea behind this piece was that I was working at a manufacturing facility at the time. I was working in trade for laser time when I did my thesis show. That's how I was able to cut all those pieces, because laser cutting is really, really expensive. It's about, well, this place wanted to charge about $300 an hour. So I was working in trade with them. And then once my thesis show was done, I kept working for them and I was hired full time. So it was nice to be able to have access to those machines. So I was working at this manufacturing place and I was seeing all this waste that went out. And it was laser cutting, so, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of places a lot of manufacturing facilities would have. But there was a lot of waste still going out. And I had recently come across an article about e-waste, which is, you know, piling up in our country, and we're sending it overseas, and people are getting sick because they're burning it down for the copper and things like that. And I went to an e-waste recycling facility, and I took pictures of all the waste. And it just sort of interested me and concerned me, and the idea of laser cutting being very little waste. So I have a video of this also that sort of explains the process. So since I did that piece, I've gotten more into the marquetry, gotten a little bit away from the folding furniture just because the marquetry interests me a little bit more, and it goes quicker. Also, it's more. I think it's more fun for me to do. It's very tedious, and I'm a perfectionist, and it's something I can kind of sit and concentrate on and control really well, which is why I really like it. The working at the laser cutting place, I got to spend time developing this process, and the people that are doing laser marquetry right now, there's only really a handful of people that are doing it really well, because they have access to the machines and they can play with the machines. And the process I developed was, it's hard to make pieces fit together perfectly. You make the file, you cut them, but again, you've got that kerf that I was talking about before, which is like 0.0017 of an inch. So you've got this gap of that much. And when you're looking at marquetry, you want it to fit really, really well. So that's too much of a gap to have. So what I do when I cut these is I offset all the pieces. I make them a little bit bigger. It's different from scaling. It's just taking the outside line and offsetting it just a little bit more. So what I do is I take that 0.0017 of an inch, split it in half, and that's my offset. And it changes. Each wood changes. So I have to test the wood first, the cutting, find out what my offset's going to be, and I'll take two squares, I'll offset one to the inside and one to the outside, and then test them until they fit perfectly. And then that's my offset for that wood, and then I cut the rest of the pieces. So that was part of the process that you saw in the video there. And so I am a news junkie. I love watching like C-SPAN and that kind of stuff. And it really interests me, just the news and events, and then going back and looking at news and events also, just headlines from different days and different years and things like that. And I wanted to make sort of a catalog and memorialize the days of just a specific time period. I also was working on doing marquetry from a photograph. So there's this program called Adobe Illustrator, and what you can do, it's got this function called Live Trace. You can import a photo, and you can go from raster to vector. And what that means is when you look at a photo, you've got all these pixels, and if you look at a vector graphic, it's all black or just all one color. And so you can take that image and transfer it from raster to vector in this software. And so I was playing with that and taking images. Well, maybe I'll just play the video, and then I'll explain it. The catalyst for the Kaleidoscope algorithm series evolved from a previous piece, the E-Waste project, which is here behind me. In this piece, I manipulated a photograph of electronic components from E-Waste using computer-aided drafting software, or CAD software, to mirror and repeat objects within the file. I used this process to create a pattern similar to the repetition produced by the mirrors in a kaleidoscope, and I translated the pattern to wood veneer, essentially to mimic historically traditional patterns of marquetry. The purpose of the piece is to show the dovetailing of tradition and technology. I was motivated to start this type of art while working at a manufacturing facility. The monetary goal of manufacturing is repetition of parts for consumer consumption, and fundamentally these pieces are inspired by, designed with, and produced using manufacturing software and machinery. That is, inspired by mass-manufactured components, designed with CAD software, produced using a laser cutter, and also assembled in a process that would emulate the repetition of assembly line production. Since finishing the E-Waste project, I began integrating image editing software into my work and wanted to try an experiment where I could take any random image, manipulate any image the same way through a series of constraints, and come up with a pattern for wood marquetry. Through trial and error, I designed an algorithm through which almost any image could make an interesting pattern. This algorithm involved a step-by-step series of constraints and processes through several image manipulation and CAD software programs. After perfecting the kaleidoscope algorithm, I needed a way to generate random images to test my experiment. I decided to use daily Google Trends to generate a random image and arbitrarily selected a series of dates on which to try the experiment. I chose the month of September 2011, and for each of the 30 days of that month, I acquired the top Google trend of the day, which is the most searched term through Google for that specific day. The next step was to search Google News for the top news article of that same day for the corresponding search term. If that news story had an image compatible with my algorithm, that became the image I used for that specific day. I plugged each image into my algorithm and manipulated all of them in the same way. The first step in the algorithm was to use a series of constraints in Adobe Illustrator to turn the image into a vector file, which meant simplifying the image into 6 colors. Once I had a vector image to work from, I used a program called Rhino to mirror then repeat each object and finally arrange those objects into a file for cutting. Each file was cut from its corresponding wood on a laser cutter. The simplified 6-color image translated to the 6 woods I had chosen specifically for their shades from light to dark: alder, walnut, zebrawood, bubinga, purpleheart, and wenge. I assembled the cut parts, glued them to a substrate using a pressurized vacuum bag, then sanded and finished each piece. The mat around the art is also laser cut, and a QR code is engraved into the corner of each mat. When you visit the gallery and scan the QR code with your phone, that QR link takes you to a process video that shows the search term, the online article, and the image manipulation for each of the 30 pieces. Besides being the artist of this work, I took on other roles for the project: the programmer of the algorithm, the laser technician cutting the parts, the skilled assembler, and the finisher. As I had no idea what the final piece would look like when I began, I basically became the manufacturer of my art. The process allowed me to step back from the role as artist after the step of choosing the dates for random image collection, as no other artistic decisions were made after that point. Because this work relied heavily on manufacturing type processes, I used my knowledge of the tools to make all the decisions before the physical making started. Hand-cut marquetry has been a tradition since the 16th century, with roots going all the way back to 353 BC. The time-honored skill of hand-cut marquetry is no simple craft to master, and many marquetarians continue to use and pass on this labor-intensive skill, producing beautiful works of art in wood. There's no comparison to the time, love, or meticulous nature of hand-cut marquetry. Over the past decade, computer numerical control, or CNC machinery, like laser cutters, routers, and 3D printers, has gradually integrated from manufacturing into art institutions, and at the forefront of this integration, some increasingly interesting work has materialized. In general, manufacturing is cost prohibitive unless you're paying a shop to produce multiples of a product, but the increase of CNC machines outside of manufacturing, combined with the continually declining cost of these machines, means that maybe someday we won't go out and buy a product, we'll buy the file online and make it ourselves. I've heard some more traditional woodworkers state using CNC machinery in woodworking is cheating. I make the challenge that this is just one more tool to master in the craft of woodworking, and the process of laser marquetry makes the craft exciting to a new generation. As woodworkers embrace the technology, we may witness a revitalization of the marquetry craft in all its forms. I look forward to seeing what new trends develop as these machines become more accessible to everyone through the growing number of institutions and member-based maker facilities adding these types of machines. Just like the embrace of using a chevalet or a fret saw from traditionally hand-wielding a blade in marquetry, I believe laser is the next step in the progression of the craft. the interesting thing about that project, the kaleidoscope algorithm project, was that I had no idea what anything was going to look like until it was completely done, until I had put all this work into it. And I did put a lot of work into it, and I made a video for each of the 30 pieces. So I wanted to show one of those videos and just show how it evolves. It's a short video. There's no sound. The search term for this day was Herman Cain, which I love because it's Mr. Pokemon himself. I would love to do like a whole year of these and just see what results I come up with, but time to move on to other projects, I guess. It was interesting to see the results because they were from just random images from Google searches. So some of them ended up being really, really gorgeous, and then other ones ended up being very simple and ugly. This one's my favorite. This was based on the search term ACT, and it was a picture of Ben Bernanke. But it just turned out that just the pie-shaped placement of his head was really beautiful. And then there's ones like this, which are just, this probably took me 20 minutes to put together. And then this is a recent piece I did for the Kurzbarts who are here. And they wanted a TV stand in their house. And so this was an experiment with a new kind of marquetry, and I'm going to play the video to explain it. So that piece I just finished a couple months ago, and I'm actually working on another piece that's similar, and I wanted to give you a little bit of a preview of it. I'm doing another chair, another folding chair, and I think I've done eight or nine of these now, and each time I make it just a little bit better, the folding form. So I've done it again, but this one I was thinking about the crane chair and how I did my thesis show, and I did the origami theme, and it always felt like I was really hitting the viewer over the head. Like this relates to origami, and so I wanted to take a more subtle approach. And the work of Tom Shrunk, which you saw in that video, he uses grain direction to sort of make wood look like it's flowing. And I thought, well, that would be great. I want to make the wood look like it's folding. So I used that technique on a chair. And the chair, I haven't done final photographs of it yet, but I wanted to kind of let you in on the process. So I'm taking a grid of squares, and I'm just stretching them so they kind of look like they're folded over. And the chair is sort of, it's almost like it's got quadrants, 4 quadrants. So I wanted to make it look like it was folding in from the middle. Very similar to origami in that, everything folds in from the middle, but it's folding wood, basically, rather than folding paper. So this just shows the setup of the file and how I rotated each individual piece. And then I took the pieces, cut them on the laser, and put them together. And so, oh wait, let me go back here. So I actually had to make a map of all these pieces. Here it is. And I've got this over here on the table if anyone would like to come up and take a look. And so I did 4 of these and put them together. And then I did just kind of a border around it. I work really, really fast. And then I put it back on the laser and cut it. And this was nerve-wracking for me because, you do all this work in the marquetry, and then you have to put it back on the machine and cut it up. So I spent a lot of time lining it up and testing it, but thankfully I was off maybe like 32nd of an inch, which is good enough. So obviously with the folding chairs, there's 2 pieces. So this is the back piece of the chair, and then there's the front piece. And here's the front piece being cut right down the middle. And that's the waist that's left. So that's it. It's a preview of what I'm working on now. Actually, that piece was just finished, but I haven't had a chance to photograph it yet. But that's, I think, where my work is going, is this sort of a more subtle approach to marquetry. Because I've done the traditional thing with the kaleidoscope algorithm. With that body of work, I was trying to take the traditional approach and make it look like traditional marquetry, but take a more technological standpoint from it. So now I'm moving into kind of a different territory. And I'm also doing some products, which I've got a couple of them up here. I brought some with if anybody's interested in purchasing them. They are selling in woodcraft stores, and it's a way for me to expand the audience and have other people try laser marquetry. I'm also, the business that I'm selling these through is called, my new business called digitalwood.com. And I've started uploading videos for other artists to learn how to do laser marquetry and learn my process. So I'm trying to get other people to do it, which is sort of going to, I'm really the only one really into this right now, which is great for me because I have no competition, but I'm basically making competition for myself. I guess I'm lonely. But I want other people to try it, and I want it to become something that young people can grab onto and make, a craft form, and I hope it has a future. So that's about it. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?